Hi, boys and girls. It's Miss Rice with the February Book of the Month. I am super excited about the book this month. This is one of my very favorite books. I know I say that all the time, but this is for real. This book is called Trombone Shorty, and it's written by Troy Andrews. It's illustrated by Brian Collier, and both the words and the pictures are absolutely amazing. You can see on the cover of the book that there's two medals here. This book has won several awards, two of which are some of the highest awards that an author or an illustrator can win. And so you'll see this medal right here is the Coretta Scott King Award. And then there's also the Caldecott Honor Book that's for illustrations. So when you read this book, you're going to see why it has won so many awards. One of the reasons I love this book is because it's a genre we haven't chosen before. Remember, genre means like the type of literature, the type of book that this is. This is a true story, but it's not just a biography. We've read some biographies before, and that's the true story of a person's life. This book is an autobiography. Auto means self, and so this means that this person, Troy Adams, wrote the story all by himself. This is his story about himself. So he's telling you about his life and some of the choices he made. Now, Troy is, as you can tell by the cover, he is a musician, and he plays an instrument called the trombone. And so he gets this nickname, Trombone Shorty, and you'll find out in the story why they call him that. But it takes place in a city called New Orleans, and jazz is the music there that is so incredibly powerful. And this is a big part of his life. You're going to listen in just a minute and see how jazz has really helped shape who he is and some of the choices that he's made. And so as you listen, I want you to think about the words that the author chose to use, and I want you to think about the pictures that the illustrator chose to draw. He used a technique with watercolors and collage, and the pictures absolutely jump out of the page. He also, to get inspired for his illustrations, he would have his friends and family act out the scenes that he was getting ready to paint. So I think you'll be pretty impressed with his illustrations, as well as Troy's words in the story. Now, one last thing before we start. You all know that I went to Auburn University, and one of our things that we say all the time is War Eagle. War Eagle is a way that we say hi to each other. Another Auburn fan, we say War Eagle, and it's kind of like saying hi to each other. Well, in New Orleans, they have a way of saying hi to each other, and they say, "Where you at?" And that's their way of saying hello when they're greeting someone. So you're going to see that expression through this book. Well, I think we should get started, and I hope you enjoy this book as much as I do. Trombone Shorty. Words by Troy, Trombone Shorty Andrews. Pictures by Brian Collier. Where yat? Where yat? We have our own way of living down here in New Orleans, and our own way of talking too. And that's what we like to say when we want to tell a friend hello. So, where yat? Lots of kids have nicknames, but I want to tell you the story of how I got mine. Just like when you listen to your favorite song, let's start at the beginning, because this is a story about music. But before you can understand how much music means to me, you have to know how important it is to my hometown, my great inspiration. I grew up in a neighborhood in New Orleans called Treme. Anytime, day or night, you could hear music floating in the air. And there was music in my house, too. My big brother James played the trumpet so loud you could hear him halfway across town. He was the leader of his own band, and my friends and I would pretend to be in the band, too. "Follow me," James would say. There's one time every year that's more exciting than any other. Mardi Gras. Parades fill the streets, and beaded necklaces are thrown through the air to the crowd. I loved the brass bands, with their own trumpets, trombones, saxophones, and the biggest brass instrument of them all, the tuba, which rested over the musician's head like an elephant's trunk. "Where yat? Where yat?" the musicians would call. All day long, I could see brass bands parade by my house while my neighbors danced along. I loved these parades during Mardi Gras because they made everyone forget about their troubles for a little while. People didn't have a lot of money in Treme, but we always had a lot of music. I listen to all these sounds and mix them together, just like how we make our food. We take one big pot and throw in sausage, crab, shrimp, chicken, vegetables, rice, whatever's in the kitchen, and we stir it all together and let it cook. When it's done, it's the most delicious taste you have ever tried. We call it gumbo, and that's what I wanted my music to sound like. Different styles combined to create my own musical gumbo. But first I needed an instrument. The great thing about music is that you don't even need a real instrument to play. So my friends and I decided to make our own. We might have sounded different from the real brass bands, but we felt like the greatest musicians of Treme. We were making music, and that's all that mattered. Then one day I found a broken trombone that looked too beaten up to make music anymore. It didn't sound perfect, but finally, with a real instrument in my hand, I was ready to play. The next time the parade went by my house, I grabbed that trombone and I headed out into the street. My brother James noticed me playing along and he smiled proudly. "Trombone Shorty," he called out, because the instrument was twice my size. "Where y'at?" From that day on, everybody called me Trombone Shorty. I took that trombone everywhere I went and I never stopped playing. I was so small that sometimes I fell right over to the ground because it was so heavy. But I always got back up and I learned to hold it up high. I listened to my brother play songs over and over, and I taught myself those songs too. I practiced day and night, and sometimes I fell asleep with my trombone in my hands. One day, my mom surprised me with tickets to the New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Festival, the best and biggest music festival in town. We went to see Bo Diddley, who my mom said was one of the most important musicians of all time. As I watched him on stage, I raised my trombone to my lips and I started to play along. He stopped his band in the middle of the song and he asked the crowd, "Who's that playing out there?" Everyone started pointing. But Bo Diddley couldn't see me because I was the smallest one in the place. So my mom held me up in the air and said, "That's my son, Trombone Shorty." "Well, Trombone Shorty, come on up here," Bo Diddley said. The crowd passed me overhead until I was standing on the stage next to Bo Diddley himself. I walked right up to the microphone and I held my trombone high up in the air, ready to blow. "What do you want to play?" Bo Diddley asked. "Follow me," I said. After I played with Bo Diddley, I knew I was ready to have my own band. I got my friends together and we called ourselves the 5 o'clock band because that was the time we went out to play each day after finishing our homework. We played all around New Orleans. I practiced and soon my brother James asked me to join his band. When people wondered who the kid in his band was, he'd proudly say, "That's my little brother, Trombone Shorty. Where y'at?" And now I have my own band called Trombone Shorty and Orleans Avenue, named after a street in Treme. I've played all around the world, but I always come back to New Orleans. And when I'm home, I make sure to keep my eyes on the younger musicians in town and help them out, just like my brother did for me. Today I play at the same New Orleans Jazz Festival where I once played with Bo Diddley. And when the performance ends, I lead a parade of musicians around, just like I used to do in the streets of Treme with my friends. Where y'at? Where y'at? I still keep my trombone in my hands, and I will never let it go. Boys and girls, I hope you enjoyed this book as much as I do. I just love his voice and how it sounds like he's sitting right next to us telling us the story himself. That is a style that a good author uses, where the words just roll right out and you hear this story from his own words. Love that it's an autobiography too. So he's telling us all about himself and growing up. One of the other things I like about this book is I think it ties in so beautifully well with Cummings' vision. You know, we always say, be a problem solver, believe you have a purpose, and become a world changer. And I can't think of a better example of someone who is following that second part of our vision, believe you have a purpose. He had music in his heart, and he talked about in the very beginning how much music impacted him, and how even though he didn't have much money, he always had music, and how that music made him feel. And he turned that joy and passion for music into a whole career. But not only is this a career for him, he's taken that career, he started his own foundation and his own music academy, and he's gone back to his hometown in New Orleans near Treme, and he's making sure that jazz and the history and culture of New Orleans stays powerful. He's going back to his hometown to make sure that he has a positive impact, and he's helped changing the world there in New Orleans. That's his purpose, to take his joy and love for music and help spread it to others and help them see the beautiful things about New Orleans and jazz and the culture they have there. My hope for you, boys and girls, is that you find your passion. You find what you care about, what stirs your heart, what brings you joy, and you use that to help bring joy to the people around you, and that you find your purpose in this world. So with that, I'm going to leave you with, where you at?